My curiosity really played a major role in my success, I would say, early in my career, because I would ask the professionals I was working with questions. Why does this work? Why do you do that? I appreciated the investment people made in me and taking the time to share with me and help me be more informed and be some more successful. And so anybody that asked that of me, I would do the same. When you are trying to evolve processes or implement change, it has to be the leadership approach.
Welcome to BDO Evolve special edition of WTF. We are trying to figure things out. And my name is Vibhu Khanna at MYCPE ONE. Today I've got Samantha Mansfield from Convergence Coaching, a recognized name across the nation for her experience and for her talks on leadership. I'm very delighted to have you on the show today.
Thank you.
And I'm sure the viewers are going to have a fun time today and will learn a lot from you.
I appreciate
Welcome
that.
to the show.
Thank you.
So Samantha, before we kind of start on to, and we talk about different aspects, why don't you give us a brief around about your journey? How did it all start? Those early days.
Absolutely. So I've been very fortunate that I have been able to work with the public accounting profession my entire career. I started in the year 2000 working on the technology side of things. So I began straight out of school. And, one of the key areas that I focused on is just helping firms with that change over from really the operating system. And not only was I helping them with updating their operating system from DOS, truly at that point, that was my first job, which I had never even used DOS, but, trying to help firms make that transition, that very quickly starting to introduce the idea of paperless systems and starting to incorporate the cloud. And for me, what I found is that I couldn't successfully have those kinds of conversations if I didn't really understand how their processes worked and what they did. And so my curiosity really played a major role in my success, I would say, early in my career, because I would ask the professionals I was working with questions. Why does this work? Why do you do that? And I also would inquire of my colleagues, because what was very fortunate in the early part of my career is I got to work right alongside CPAs that chose to go into the technology field. And so I would ask them at lunch, or I would get off of a call with a client and say, this made no sense to me. Explain it to me. And what I really found is that very early on, what I got excited about and what made me feel fulfilled in my day is when I could solve problems. So it wasn't just about making a change in technology or getting somebody to be able to use some advanced technology, but really the crux of it was solving problems in their processes in that instance. And so I moved to consulting actually very quickly in my career. But the other element that was always a common theme is that I appreciated the investment people made in me and taking the time to share with me and help me be more informed and be some more successful. And so anybody that asked that of me, I would do the same. And we did an exercise, I don't know, maybe about 11 years into my career, where we went through the Simon Sinek start with why.
Right.
And that was a very eye-opening experience for me, because I really had to contemplate it. And it took me about a week to be able to come up with what my why was. And it made me realize that my why was really about helping others and sharing information. I love to share information and to be able to give people information, data, input that helps them get to wherever it is they're wanting to go. And so I just found that no matter what my role was, I kept doing that and I kept finding ways to do that. And so I think it's rather logical that as we continue to look at the progression or arc of my career, that's what I do every day.
Right. So would it be right to say that probably those were the years where that was the point where you moved towards leadership and coaching? Because prior to that, it was, I'm sure some other set of tasks or probably, some other responsibilities that you were having.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I would say, again, early, I was very process oriented. But when you are trying to evolve processes or implement change, it has to be the leadership approach. Because we can give all the reasons, all the logical reasons, all the benefits. But if we can't influence change, if we can't inspire others to come along with us, if we can't support others as they go through the worries and the concerns about what's changing and the transformation and what's to come, then we oftentimes don't succeed, as well as it's really a very arduous process. And so when we have strong leadership as we're trying to drive that kind of change, the process can be actually rewarding, fulfilling, exciting, as opposed to something that feels burdened or as difficult. And so I really saw the importance of that and looked to try to improve myself because I was trying to help others make those changes. And now I'm at a point in my career where I get to help leaders develop those skills so that they can go make the impact and the change that they see and want out of their organizations.
Right. So you touched upon the part of, the evolution part of, how the role. So what was it for Samantha as a person, the evolution journey? Because I'm sure you're meeting so many leaders, these executive, the panel, the bench, the top C-suits. So do you need to prepare yourself a lot as well? So how did that evolution happen? Probably, can you kind of touch upon a couple of points on that aspect?
I would absolutely accredit that ability for me to get from where I was to where I am today to very influential mentors. 100% I can identify that I would not be where I am today without very key mentors that I had along the way. And there are these inflection points that I would say that I can see where the course of my career changed. And that was because somebody took an interest and pushed me of where I didn't think I was capable of going. And quite honestly, I have to vulnerably admit, it surprised me. But they saw something in me that I wasn't seeing in myself. And it really enabled me to take leaps that, again, as I pictured my career trajectory, I never envisioned. And I am incredibly grateful to those individuals that had done that.
Right. So, yeah, that's what, generally a lot of mentors do. And people who are kind of coming up. I have also faced the same problem, in the initial years. That why am I being asked to do certain things?
Yeah.
That's like, scratching the comfort zone.
Right. Yeah.
And the more you do that, the more the conditioning happens of the mind.
Yes.
The mind, the body, everything goes through that, zone of being done. And you feel like, oh, it's not happening. Why should I am doing this? And maybe the person doesn't understand me. Right. But once you see those results, say it's 6 months, 12 months, depending on whatever you're pursuing, it becomes a very different perspective. And I think that's what you're doing right now today, with all those people. Do you want to give a shout out to any of them, any of the mentors that you think?
Oh, gosh. Well, one of my most recent, I really have to say, is Jennifer Wilson, the co-founder of Convergence Coaching. She and I had started working together when she was basically a client of mine. And Jennifer, or Jen, she really does a phenomenal job of genuinely caring and getting to know you. And that she is one of the most recent, and I'm not saying that because we work at the same firm now, but like I said, I've known her for a decade, and I've been with Convergence Coaching for 5 years. So, I mean, she was definitely doing that for me early on. Another woman that I can say that was very early in my career, and she was here at the BDO conference as well, is a woman by the name of Candy Cross. And she is another one that she saw something in me that I didn't. And I was 23 years old, and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the skills. And she really pushed me out of the comfort zone. She's one that got me out there, and that completely made a right-hand turn in the whole trajectory of what I started to envision for my career. And I am forever grateful to her for that.
Great to know about such, names. And I'm glad that those people invested time and efforts into you. That's why we have, the final, I won't say the final, but it's where you are. I'm sure you're
Yeah.
Great. Moving from, your journey, let's talk a bit about the public accounting sector and what you do right now. The transformation leadership part. How do you view that in the context of the accounting firm? What kind of work you have been doing, and, how things are, what are challenges, the problems or solutions you have been working on. So let's talk a bit about that.
Yeah. Oh my. Well, there's a number of things that we could speak to, right? Because one of the elements, and again, in my over 2 decades of working with public accounting professionals, there has been tremendous amounts of change. And of course, we know that there are always changes in the regulations and the standards. But I would say that some of the major trends that are really influencing accounting is, one, the technology, and 2, the demographics of the professionals coming into accounting, as well as the demographics of the clients that we serve. And so when we look at the impact of those 2 trends and how it really is evolving what accounting is today, that does mean that leaders who have been in this profession for decades, and they're looking at what's that next phase, or what's the legacy that my firm is going to have, and how do I pass that on, and how do we make it continue to be relevant for what the next generation of clients need. That's where we see this growth of advisory services, right? Because the generations that are coming up that are going to want accounting services, they're very comfortable with using technology. I shared a story while I've been here at the BDO conference that on Saturday before flying out here, I was at my son's lacrosse game, and another mom that was in the crowd, she is also a consultant, very professional career. And she just asked me the question. She said, what are accountants going to be able to do that ChatGPT can't?
Yeah. Hey.
And I really appreciated the honesty of her question. And I personally see so much that accountants are going to be able to do. But it does mean that we need to evolve the service and the way that we communicate what the accounting profession does for their clients. And so I loved that she asked me that question, and especially phenomenal timing heading here, because that's the type of transformation, right? We can't, not only can we not do Sally, right, same as last year of our processes and so on, but we need to look at Sally of saying, what do we need to do to change the services so that we continue to engage clients? Because they're asking what's going to be different. As well as talent that are coming in, they're saying, gosh, technology can do a lot of these things. So what's going to be my role? And what do I do in that space? And it's been interesting while being here at the conference as well. They had a great opening keynote talking about artificial intelligence. She shared a data point that caught a lot of our attention, right? And that was, she said, with generative AI and the advancement of all of the artificial intelligence, that 80% of the value that we have been giving is now has no value.
It's been replaced or probably being provided by AI in some form.
Exactly. 80% of our value now has no value. And that almost takes the air out of your lungs, and you're thinking 80%. But then she gave us the positive to that it's the 20% is now 10,000 times more valuable.
The Pareto principle comes to it. Actual.
Yes, and that's where this profession is not stagnant. And so it's about that transformation, and it's about how are we leaning into that 20% and continue to, again, look forward.
Right. So we talk a lot about transformation, especially, when it's around the kind of work that you have been doing or, your firm does. So what are some of the gaps you see in leaders, who come to you, and what is typically their, from a marketing standpoint of view, if I ask, what's the ideal customer profile for you?
Well, I would say that one of the systemic problems that we have in the way that we develop talent in the accounting profession is that we tend to assess on the technical knowledge and we elevate on the technical knowledge, which is very important, and I don't deny that. The problem is that we need a lot of people skills, soft skills, relationship building skills. And historically, what's happened in firms is that has been minimized in importance. And so when we look at, just like what we were just saying, the impact of artificial intelligence and how that's a supplemental tool to our knowledge and the execution of the technical work, the relationship skills, the people skills, or those quote unquote soft skills are even more important. And we don't put enough investment in that learning and in that development because it's vital to being able to connect with clients, to build rapport, to earn trust. And granted, this profession is the most trusted, right? We have to. People are very sensitive when it comes to their finances.
Exposure is such.
Exactly. But there's still an element where we need to go deeper with our client relationships. And we need them to see us as a real partner for the accounting professionals working with their clients so that they really understand what's their motivation, what is their goal, what are they trying to get at? And then it gives us those insights to really go deliver a service that helps them reach that. And then that client's not going to go anywhere. And that's where the client's not worried about how many hours did you work. It's all about the value that you provided to them.
Right. So we just spoke about, that the focus is more on the technical aspect, which is not wrong. That's ultimately that's the entryway, and that's what's going to, make you a respectable figure in the fraternity. I was talking to some of the other, guests in one of the podcasts on the tech front, and I think that portion applies to this as well. What about the cultural, gambit in the for that, how you look at it as an aspect, because there is accountability involved. Yeah, there is continuous improvement required. Innovation, I agree, but, let's not talk about the innovation. Maybe that's on the tech part, but let's talk about continuous improvement, because people come in, they spend a couple of years, they move to the next roles. And what your job, probably the kind of work that you do, that's very critical for them to move from that point to the next point or, in the ladder. So what kind of cultural things you have been working for more than 2 decades? How is the environment, say, in a firm that you have worked with?
Yeah. Well, I think culture is exceptionally important for so many reasons, right? And many of which the people that are joining and listening in, they're familiar with too. But what I would say some of the important aspects of culture is that we need to be intentional about defining our culture. Mm-hmm. And we need to be intentional about communicating that and then making sure that that culture that we're saying is critical to our success is actually lived within our firm.
Right.
And that really needs to be exemplified by leadership and all the way down, right? So one of the things that we run into an awful lot is over the last several years, there's been so much more adoption of working remotely. But we also see in the headlines a lot, return to office, bring people back in. And one of the reasons that leaders state that is because they're concerned about the effect on culture. Now, when we talk to practitioners at conferences like this or wherever, one of the things that tends to happen is when we say, well, what are the elements of your culture that you're most concerned about losing with not having everybody physically together? They can be challenged with being able to articulate that. And so I think what happens is that there's a number of firms that the culture has just kind of developed purely based on the behaviors or the influencing individuals, but we haven't necessarily intentionally specified what do we want our culture to be and what do we want to exemplify. And we need to take some time to define that. And then we need to make sure that we're living it out with our strategies, with our behaviors, with our messaging, and let's hold each other accountable to that. And so some firms, there's a lot of merger and acquisition and all of those types of things happening. And that's where culture can get very confusing as well, because we're not always really taking proactive action of making sure that the merged in entity is aligning with the culture. And does it make sense in that moment? Are there changes? Are there things that we should evolve about the way that we are defining our culture? It may be yes, it may be no, but are we actually having a conversation about it? And then making sure that we communicate what this is. And like I said, if we have a leader that says, well, that's great, but you know what? I'm a few years from retirement. I'm just not doing that. We can't let that exist. And as leaders, we have to hold each other accountable. And we have to say, this is what we need to do. And we need to make sure that this works for the whole team. And it doesn't if we have some that are just not aligning with that. And that's really important.
Right. So before we kind of wrap up, if I ask you 3 quick tips, for a firm who probably is in that zone where your probably ideal customer is, what are the 3 quick steps they need to follow?
So for specifically like trying to get that alignment on culture
and on leadership, somebody's in that zone wherein, probably they have kind of understood, okay, this is required. But what are the three immediate steps I need to follow as per Samantha?
I guess one thing is to really openly communicate with each other. And let's have some transparent conversation about here's what we want. And if somebody is really questioning it or is this going to work, we need to have a transparent, open conversation with each other about it. And one of the things that we should talk about is the fact that we all have selfish interests, but we can't let those selfish interests guide us. But we can talk about that we have the selfish interest. And here's where I worry that it's going to affect me. It's going to affect my time commitment or how much money I'm going to make or, how I feel about working here. And that's a big piece of culture, right? So as leaders, we need to talk openly with each other to identify where are the concerns, where are the challenges. I would say that another element is we really need to make sure we're listening. So we need to listen to our talent and understand what motivates them. Why are they in this profession? What do they want out of their careers? I hear so much about leaders saying, man, I don't understand this next generation, right? They're not working the same way I have, or they're not responding to the same incentives that I did, and I don't understand. And a part we're going to make movement on that is to listen and realize too that it's not all about coming up with these holistic or general guidelines, but let's connect one-on-one and realize that to get the most out of our people it is a one size fits one.
Yeah, some quick rapid fire insights, So one leadership book or podcast recommendation you have?
Ooh, one that I really like and I think is applicable is What Got You Here Won't Put You There.
Okay.
As we think of transformation.
Right. A trend that excites you in 2025?
I hate to give the one that most people are probably saying, but I really do think artificial intelligence has so much potential and we're nowhere near tapping it.
Right. So there is a lot to be done on that.
I think there's a lot to be understood and there's a lot to be used, and it is not something to be feared, but it is a tool.
Right. One habit that's made a big impact in your own life, in your leadership journey?
I would say courageously going after opportunities, okay, and not letting self-doubt hold me back. So I would say really courageously saying, I am going to try this. And a quote that I heard early in my career that I've always stuck with is, if I knew failure wouldn't happen, what would I try? And I really try to embrace that.
Awesome. And before we kind of wrap up, where can the listeners connect with you and know about your work?
LinkedIn is a great place to connect with me. And so it's an easy place to get on. I've been able to do that with a number of people here. And my contact information is on my LinkedIn. So you can either private message me, my email address is there. And I'm always happy to talk to people. And if I'm not the best person to talk to, I have been very blessed with knowing a lot of people in this profession, and I love to make introductions. So it's not just about my knowledge.
Samantha, thank you so much for such an insightful session. It was energizing. We wrap up the BDO Evolve podcast series of WTF, and I don't think there could be anything better than a farewell session with Samantha on this one. My name is Vibhu Khanna from MYCPE ONE. Thanks for tuning in.